Hey everybody, Ed here with Zoo Church. Just want to do a little lesson with the kids, but actually this will be fine for all ages for your ministry, but definitely will make it understandable for the little ones, so you can watch these videos. They'll be on YouTube, and then you can decide what age, if any age, you'd like to use them. I want to talk to you today about snakes for a few minutes. This here is a beautiful king snake, a California king snake, so we'd find them in the wild in California. They like more drier type habitats, and you can see he's sticking out his tongue a lot. Because when God made snakes, he didn't make them to smell the way we do. We smell with our noses and breathe with our noses, but snakes smell with their tongue. They actually there are little particles in the air, little teeny things, invisible things in the air, and the snake sticks his forked tongue out and he grabs those little particles and he curls them in and puts them inside of his head with his two little holes called the Jacobson organ, which will identify if it's predator or prey, so he knows whether to slither away or stay still, or if it's something he can eat. But let's go back to the Garden of Eden, the beginning of time, the beginning of everything, right? So in the garden, you had Adam and Eve, and they were told, you can enjoy everything, just not the tree of life, right? And that was for their own good. But being people, they said, hey, we think that looks pretty interesting. And you know what? It was Eve who was checking it out, and then the devil in the form of a serpent, right? So it wasn't, the snake isn't bad. So I tried to teach people, because I know a lot of people have a fear of snakes. And I had one pastor yell at me and say, how dare you bring that evil creature into the house of God, right? And I said, that snake is very nice. And he said, haven't you read Genesis? I said, of course I have. That was the devil that came into the snake and spoke to Eve, and then Eve made the mistake of listening. Adam made the mistake of not sticking up for her, and you know, because she handed the fruit right to Adam, so he was probably right there with her then. And that was what we call the fall, and that's why we live in the world we live in today, where bad things can happen to good people. And someone said to me, but we're all children of God. You know what? That's actually not quite true. We are all loved by God, all created by God, but we don't become his children, his prized possession, as it says in James 1:18, his absolute masterpiece, as it says in Ephesians 2:10, until we make the decision to give our life to him. God is your heavenly Father who loves you more than you can ever imagine, and he wants to adopt you, but you have to say yes. I have 6 biological children, and then we adopted 1 boy. And you know what? Now my wife is his mom and I am his dad. But we had to invite him to be our son, and he had to say yes. God is inviting you to be his son or his daughter. All you have to do is say yes. So when you see a snake, you don't want to be afraid of it, because you know what? Most of them are pretty harmless. There are venomous ones, and of course we want to use our God-given brain and be careful. But this snake here is harmless to people. He does have a mouth, so he could bite. It would not hurt at all, but I'm not putting him around my neck or near my eyes or anything like that. I'm gonna put him down just for a minute and just show you another beautiful little snake. Let me just see this little guy. You can go in here temporarily for a minute. You stay there. And this little guy is neat. This is called a hognose snake, and this one actually has a little bit of venom that we just talked about. Venom, some people call it poison, and the animal, if it's an animal, you really want to use the word venom. And he has a little sharp nose that he can dig under the ground with, and he has fangs, but the fangs are in the back of his mouth. So when he bites onto a little animal, he has to chew on it and put the venom in, and then he can swallow it. I know it sounds a little gross, but you know what? That's not the world God created. God created us to eat plants at first, and then eventually we could eat everything. But you know what? The animals weren't designed to kill each other. It wasn't until after the fall, and actually after the flood, where animals started to act that way. But we know when Jesus comes back, the Bible tells us that the animals will then again get along, and they won't be eating each other at all. So this snake has a little bit of venom. I'm holding him like this, and I'm not too worried about it because he doesn't have enough venom to hurt a person. And while we're on the subject of venom, let me just take out this one. This one could be a little nipper, so we'll see. This here is a Puebloan milk snake, and the milk snake often gets confused for the coral snake in South and Central America, which does have venom. Remember, venom is a word that we use for a poison when it comes to animals. So if you look at him, he has red and black and then yellow. So the saying goes, red touches yellow, it could kill a fellow. That would mean venom, right? And so the red doesn't touch the yellow. Red touches black, it's okay, Jack. Even if your name's not Jack, it's still okay. Now, there are exceptions to the rules, so really, if you don't know what kind of snake you're dealing with, you really don't want to touch it at all. But I want to go back a little bit and talk about fear. Now, you see these little snakes, you may not be too afraid. Some people get very nervous when it comes to snakes, but we're going to take out a little bigger snake called a boa constrictor and talk to you about him for a second.